How can Utah win recruiting? That's what we'll be diving into on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media. We can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Dante Guardi from UteZone. We're going to talk about Utah's recruiting strategy, Utah's game against Idaho that they just scheduled. Yes, it's all the way in 2026, but in the midst of all the craziness that is conference realignment, want to talk about the value of playing FCS schools and the good things that have come out of those, and want to close today's show with a tribute to the legend Steve Klauke, who did just tragically pass away today. So we're going to talk about that at the end, but do want to start with how Utah can go about trying to win recruiting. And Dante, when I say Utah win recruiting, what I mean by that is just continue to stay prominent in college football. I talked about on a show recently, they are actually in a show that's going to be coming out soon, that EA Sports has them as a tier 1 team because of their AP poll success in being ranked over the course of the past 10 years. So in order to keep that up, you have to continue to recruit strongly. So how does Utah win recruiting? I'm going to give a really boring answer, but it's absolutely the truth. They just need to continue to recruit players that fit their systems. I'm sure there's some of you out there saying Utah needs to land this 4-star and they need to land this guy and that guy. But the truth is, I just trust this coaching staff. All that they have done is produce with the recruits that they brought in. The fact that they were 8-4 last year with all the injuries is just an incredible testament to the coaching and developing this Utah football staff does. So we can dive into some of the few more specifics in general. But Dante, in order for Utah to continue to win at recruiting, the coaches just need to continue to bring in the players that fit their system. And I think Utah will continue to be successful now that they transition into the Big 12.
First and foremost, the coaches know what they want. They know the type of players they want to bring into the program. They know the type of players they want to develop. And in order to get those guys on board, in order to get them to buy what the coaches are selling, Utah simply just needs to keep doing what they're doing in regard to winning football games. Obviously, last year was a little bit of a hiccup, if you will. I guess 8-5. That's not even really a hiccup, though, considering the context of the season with all the injuries. But
and the bowl game opt-outs, like you mentioned, like that's why I didn't mention even the 5th one, because I'm like, I'm sorry, but with all the guys that opted out, that just has a big impact on things.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's a hiccup relative to how they did in the seasons prior. But even that season was by no means a failure. I mean, they had some high points. Like they went to USC and beat the number 1 overall draft pick, arguably the most highly touted college prospect to ever grace the sport, So they had some high points, and obviously there were some low points as well. But nonetheless, I mean, Utah is still up there, talked about consistently as one of the top former Pac-12 programs, one of the top Big 12 programs. So in order to keep winning on the recruiting trail, they just got to keep winning on the football field, and making sure that assistants aren't going to be leaving. Utah has the best assist. I mean, it's like so weird to say because obviously we're a little bit biased, but man, I love the assistant coaches Utah has. I think they're the best. That's what I'm saying. I think that's a little bit weird to say, but I really do think they're the best. And Kyle Whittingham knows the type of assistants he wants on his staff, and he's gotten some of the best in the nation. And it's honestly shocking to me that some of these guys haven't left to go to the Alabamas of the world and more teams like that, because they totally could if they wanted to. But nonetheless, they stay at Utah. And with these guys around, we're only going to keep seeing better recruits come in, because you like to see some sustainability, if you will, on your staff. If there's a lot of turnover year in and year out, it's a little bit tougher unless you're one of these big blue blood programs who has just copious amounts of cash and your assistants are going to like the NFL rather than other colleges. So the players aren't transferring because you can't transfer to an NFL team from Michigan, But yeah, I mean, if Utah is able to keep their staff intact and limit the amount of turnover on there and keep winning football games, they're going to be able to accomplish all they want on the recruiting trail. And as we've seen, as the years have kind of progressed, I mean, they've done all that they wanted to do, and it's only gotten better. It's only gotten better. Like you said, they're a tier 1 program by EA Sports. The last NCAA video game that came out, Utah was 4 out of 6 stars. Like when you go to pick your team in the dynasty, Utah had 4 stars. Now they're tier 1. So the growth is obviously being noticed by not necessarily the people who matter. Like EA Sports, you can say it doesn't matter, it really, but it does in our minds, because it shows that people actually care outside of the people that are in the Utah football like atmosphere. So it's cool that people are taking notice because it's true. If you watch the games, it's not hard to take notice either because the coaching staff is doing their job. They're winning football games, and as long as, like I said, as long as they keep the staff intact and they keep doing what they're doing on the football field, I don't think Utah will struggle when it comes to achieving their goals on the recruiting trail.
I absolutely agree. When you talk about continuity, it's essential, not having to replace. And really, the only recent ones obviously changed running back coach, receiver coaches. But I mean, that's it. Like there's so many coaches that have been with Utah now for several years, and that continuity and connection. So like a lot of guys go to a place and the coach that recruited them isn't there. So then they end up leaving. That's not something Utah has to worry about. Sure, guys leave because they want playing time or things of that nature, but that's not an indictment on Utah. The fact that player couldn't get playing time, that other guys beat them out. So the chemistry is such a huge thing that allows the culture and everything. And that's what Utah is based in. We trust in this culture because it's produced. It's why we trust these coaches who have built that culture to go out and recruit the players that best fit into their system. And if we're going to get more specific on what Utah needs to do to continue to win recruiting, once again, I'm not obsessed over landing as many 4-star guys as we can. 4 stars are awesome. Utah consistently beat Pac-12 teams that landed more 4 stars than they did. So that's why, to me, the most important thing is the coaches getting the guys that fit their system, because I've seen when Utah gets the guys that fit their system and maximize them to the best of their ability, that's where, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. That's a very popular saying. Utah was really kind of like put that to use. We've seen over the years with how these players come in, they work hard, and they prove to be better than the higher recruits that have gone to other schools too. Now, if you can find high recruits that fit the system and want to come to Utah, by all means, welcome to Salt Lake City. Utah will continue to take those type of guys, right? But I don't think it's paramount to their success that Utah gets as many 4 stars as they can. Like we said, the biggest thing to me is 3 stars on top of, I'll throw this out there. I think any successful team like Utah has been, you want to recruit your home state very well. You do not want other programs coming in and prying the top guys out from your state. You want the guys who grew up as Utah fans, who are the best players in the state, going to the University of Utah. You want as many of those guys coming to the U, because Utah is the premier program in the state of Utah if we look back on the past few years. Don't even need my opinion for that if BYU fans want to get mad. That's literally a statistic over on EA Sports that we mentioned with those tier 1 programs. And the last wrinkle I will throw into this, Dante, so continue to grab your guys, recruit your own state, and utilize the transfer portal, because we are talking about recruiting as a whole, to fill in the gaps on your roster, which is what Utah has done. When they've lost a player, it's like, oh man, we could use a really good wide receiver 1. Oh, hey, here comes Dorian Singer. Be nice if we could get another really strong tight end. Here comes Carson Ryan. So continuing to use the portal to plug in the needs wherever recruits maybe don't necessarily work out, because every guy you recruit and try to bring in, you're obviously hoping he's going to be that elite game changer that goes on to do massive things, but that's just the reality. Not all of them work out that way. So that's where the transfer portal comes in to plug in those needs. Don't rely all the way on the transfer portal, but when you combine in the transfer portal, recruiting your own state strongly, and bringing in your type of players, I think that's how Utah's best bet is to continue to win recruiting and be successful.
Yeah, and as you were saying, when it comes to the continuity of the coaching staff, one of the mantras that Utah has kind of carried, especially as of late over the past few years, is the whole family on 3 theme of the program. And when you have coaches sticking around for longer periods of time, despite the success and the opportunities at bigger schools potentially, it shows a lot when they stay. And you could use that as part of your recruiting pitch to say, hey, look, I mean, it really is a family. Look at Colton Swan, look at Sharif Shah, guys who are just at the upper echelon of their position when it comes to the other coaches that coach the same positions within the country for college football. They're staying here. So it really is a family, and they can use that to their benefit. And yeah, I mean, recruiting, it's an interesting thing, as you were saying, because before then, Utah, because you can only give out a certain amount of scholarships. So Utah not even that long ago, like 6-7 years ago, probably was kind of holding back from offering too many 4 or 5-star recruits simply because they knew they weren't going to go, because they had the Texases, the Alabamas, the Georgias of the world calling their phone, Oregon, USC, teams that were in the Pac-12 too. But now I think we can safely say that Utah is probably the team of the highest pedigree in the current Big 12, especially when you take into account like the past 5 years ish. I mean,
Definitely.
when you think about it, like since 2018, excluding the COVID year, which was really just the Devontae Smith highlight reel year, excluding that season, Utah only missed the conference championship one time since 2018. They made it 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, missed it last season with all the injuries. So this is a program that's worked its way up to one of the most respected, certainly on the West Coast, if not the entire nation. So with that gradual growth, they'll only be able to land higher ranked players who do fit their mold. So like I said, as long as we keep seeing success on the field and no extreme turnover with the staff, Utah's going to keep doing what they want successfully on the recruiting trail. I think it's as simple as that, honestly.
I agree. We have gotten great results recently from Utah football because of the players the coaches have brought in and developed. So I think we both agree. Why would we not feel good about the players they're going to be bringing in? It's worked out great for them in the past. I expect it to continue to work out. And, we talk about development a lot. Big development. There's no way to develop guys as much as getting them game experience. And that's where games against FCS opponents are so key. Utah recently scheduled Idaho. Want to talk about the significance of not just that, but the ability to schedule FCS teams in general. We're going to be diving into that in one moment. But first, want to talk to you all about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It's our friends at eBay Motors. Patience, passion, drive is exactly what you need to bring home the winning formula. And that is what eBay Motors offers for you. When you're talking about eBay Motors, you're talking about the best in the business. They truly have the formula for winning championships that keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Dante, college football has changed a lot, but at least for now, I'm glad that games against FCS opponents are still a thing. And I'm not saying we need 30 of them, obviously not for football reason, but just in general, because they're not always the most competitive, right? And the reason we're talking about this is Utah is going to be playing the Idaho Vandals in 2026. And this is something that and yes, I have the Big Sky connection. So obviously shout out Big Sky, gets excited about that aspect of this. But these games are really important to Utah, I believe, too, because, and it's not just important to Utah, it's important to everyone. Ask the Citadel, who has made a living off of scheduling games against Alabama, Clemson, whoever it may be, because those schools like to have a game where they can, for those teams, a lot of times it's rest their players late in the season, but also get those younger guys game experience. Because as I said, going into the break, there's nothing like game experience. Being out there live on the field, noisy environment, everything, forced to make a play in real time. And those mistakes obviously come with the biggest types of consequences, not just up downs, but potentially giving up touchdowns. So those are big things that matter. And those are only achieved, that type of stakes that you are forced to learn from, because you don't forget when you make a mistake like that in a game, are in those game type scenarios. And what's nice for Utah is in a game like this against Idaho, they're going to have that against Southern Utah this year. These are the type of games that allow your reserves to get in. So you can get them that game experience. You can work with them more, see what you got in them a little bit, see who steps up in the spotlight, see who leaves a little bit to be desired. I think there is a lot of value in these games, even though there's never going to be the same excitement about it, nor should there be, as the big ones. But in terms of for the program itself, I think there are a lot of value in playing FCS teams, and I'm excited that Utah has added Idaho to their schedule.
Yeah, you mentioned the Citadel. It's only fair we shout out Samford and Mercer as well as part of that grouping of teams who just get mollywopped every November against Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, etc. But Yeah, scheduling Idaho, I think it's a good thing, especially when you take into account this will probably be like an opening week game. I mean, imagine
Yep.
your team only really having the spring game and then like what is that, 4-ish months off, and then you're playing a really good team right away. It's a little bit sketchy. It's a good warm up for the rest of the season, see where things are at, especially when you have position battles that aren't fully over yet. When you want to see how guys compete in a game, the type of energy they bring, how their instincts are. I mean, just little things that do play a factor in who wins a position battle. Those are questions that can be answered in a game against an FCS team, whereas it's a little bit more risky to go about that when you're playing a much better team and you're at much higher risk of losing. And not to mention, Utah just got a transfer from Idaho, Anthony Woods. So
Yeah.
this gives Utah like another opportunity to scout players from these FCS programs who they might want to go after in the transfer portal. I mean, this is maybe a little bit of an odd comparison, but I watch a lot of European soccer, and that's what a lot of the preseason games are good for. Like if a team needs, say, a midfielder, they play a team from a little bit of a smaller country, their players aren't making as much money, and say a midfielder scores a goal against them. It's like that gives them a lever to go out and try to approach them to get them on their team to fill a void. So these are just more opportunities for Utah to see more players that they might want to acquire if it comes to that. It's a good warm up. I mean, the list goes on. The only negative about scheduling an FCS team is if you schedule multiple. I think you don't want to schedule too many of them. It makes your schedule look bad. And honestly, it's for the fans. Like I can't really get up to watch Utah play two FCS teams back to back. It's good for the week one just to get back into the swing of things. But after that, we want real football. So Utah versus Idaho, I think it's a good series for a variety of reasons, just as long as Utah doesn't put them next to another FCS team on the schedule. I think that'd be a little bit of a bummer, but I don't think they will. We've seen Mark Harlan go out and schedule some big teams. Utah's got a series with LSU coming up here in like 6 years too, by the way. So we got a lot to be excited for when it comes to the non-conference schedule. And it's good that we're making it a well-rounded schedule rather than just scheduling Florida, LSU, and a lot of these other teams. I know we got one against Arkansas coming up here in a couple of years as well. And obviously Baylor. And I know there was one with Houston too that was supposed to happen, but I'm not really sure how they're going to go about that anymore because obviously we're in the same conference as them now. But that did happen. So we've shown an initiative to go out there and schedule good teams. So scheduling a bad team, it's only really a concern if you're scheduling too many of them. But for Utah, that simply hasn't been the case. So I really only see negatives. Or I mean positive.
No, and you're right, because when you're talking about scheduling too many FCS teams, that's dangerous because the strength of schedule is a big thing. So the committee at the end of the years for when you're trying to get into a good bowl game or make the college football playoff, as Utah has, that would be used against you. Absolutely. It's like, well, they were 11-1 or whatever Utah is, but they played two FCS teams. Like, schedules get brought up a lot in college football. You should always try to play. I like how Utah's done it. They play a legit game. That's what the game against Baylor was. You have a game like, or last year, technically they had two of those games. Last year was a tough schedule, but I think back a couple years ago, like when they would play a BYU, right? Like that's a legit game. You play someone there. Then you play a San Diego State, like a group of 5 team, but one you should still beat. And then you get the FCS opponent like that too. So it's a good opportunity for everyone to come in, build the momentum, get the hype up, all of that. And I mentioned hype vibes, whatever you want to call it. That's a big thing going into a season. So you want, especially if you're a university, like this is where the marketing aspect comes into it, right? You want to start your season with a big positive win and a dub so that everyone had a great time in attendance. They watched their team kick butt and they're all excited to come back the next week. It's not fun to start it if you're going to play a really close team and you lose, like you get off to a bad start. That's just not good for future ticket sales and things like that. So this is where it's a great welcome back inside Rice-Eccles Stadium. Everyone's having a great time beating down on a team. And that's where these type of games become so valuable on top of the amount of experience you get. And I also love the point you made about, just getting recruiting and watching and seeing, okay, who else is out there? Who can we learn about? Who can we try to grab from and bring over instead? I think all those things are absolutely the case, Dante. So I definitely hope these FCS games are here to stay. But as much as I love the Big Sky, to your point too, can't play too many of them because it does drastically reduce the strength of the schedule overall. So going to be interesting to see how Utah continues to go about scheduling FCS teams and just the future of college football, whatever it may look like and how crazy it could be. But I'm glad Idaho is on the docket for now. So we'll be interested to watch it when it comes down to that in 2027. Dante, I always appreciate you stopping by, my friend. Make sure you guys check out his work over at UteZone.com. And Dante, thanks again for joining me.
Of course. Thank you for having me, JT. Pleasure as always.
I appreciate you, my friend. So that is going to do it for Dante, but I am actually going to continue on because there is something I want to talk about before we get out of here today, and that is the passing of Steve Klauke, the longtime Bees play-by-play announcer and who was with Weber State continuing his work. Tragically lost his life this week in a motor vehicle accident. My thoughts and prayers just first off just go out to his family. And this is one of those things where, just being completely real and honest, like, it was a total gut punch. When I remember reading my phone, I'll actually be like, literally how I saw it was I saw Josh Furlong had tweeted out retweeted a story that KSL.com had did. And I'm like, that's a random time to promote it about Klauke. But then my heart completely sank when it said remembering him. And I just remember that feeling of dread just overtake me, and just so much sadness and that heartbroken feeling, like I said, because Steve is someone that, even though I didn't get to know him very long, still made an impression on me. When I moved out to Utah in 2019, that summer, I was able to get in touch with Steve, and he let me come up to a Bees game and watch a game, like just sit next to him in the press box and hear him call a game. And, I just wrapped up calling Division II baseball games like this, in going into the World Series even. And was able to learn a lot of my early baseball foundation as a play-by-play broadcaster from being able to sit up there and watch one of the best to ever do it. It's been documented. There was major league interest for him for years because that's how good he was. He was a fantastic broadcaster. And I also got to listen to him a lot during his time at Weber State, and I'd see him up there frequently at events. And as great of a broadcaster he truly was an even better person. When you're talking about someone who always wanted to know and ask, hey, how are you doing? How's everything going? Going the extra step, and letting a 19-year-old at the time come and sit in the booth with him and work on him and answer all his questions. And you see all the outpouring of love today from the other broadcasters out there, right? Talking about how much that his just warmness and welcomeness, that he would help everyone out, help everyone be better in the Utah sports media scene and just in everyday life. Just that impact is why he will never be forgotten, even beyond all of his work for the Bees. And I feel so lucky that I got the opportunity to get to know him and see why he was one of the best minor league, and I'll just even say one of the best baseball play-by-play guys out there that I've easily ever listened to. He was incredible. The Bees were lucky to have him as their voice for so long. And once again, I feel lucky that I just got to meet him, because he was an incredible man in person, and I will never forget all the ways he went out of his way for me. And I hope to have a similar impact at some point in my career on other broadcasters if I get lucky enough, just the way that Steve Klauke was able to. So my thoughts and prayers again go out to his family. And it's definitely the Utah broadcasting world in general. I just lost an absolute legend today. And I just wanted to once again offer my thoughts and condolences to all of his family and all of you out there who grew up listening to Steve too. I saw a lot of those tributes as well. And I'm sure it's been a tough week for you guys as well, going through all of that. So that is going to do it for the show today. I appreciate all of you guys for listening each and every day. We'll be back with you soon for more Utah related content. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Utes.